National Fire Radio.
Hey everyone, welcome back for another episode of the National Fire Radio podcast. Before we get started with today's episode, I just want to take a few minutes and talk about a few different things that matter. Things like thank you. Thank you to our community if you're a longtime listener or just your first or second time here on the audio platform listening to the daily podcast. We appreciate your support, becoming part of the community, and making this job better. And so with that, if you have any thoughts, ideas, critiques, people you think should be on the show, or topics or ideas that you want to send forth, your direct line to the show is through our new email, podcast@nationalfireradio.com. Send us your thoughts, ideas, people you think would be good for the show, anything that's on your mind, send it over to podcast@nationalfireradio.com. That's your direct line right to the show. On top of that, if you feel inclined, please leave a review. Give us a 5-star review. That would be fantastic, and we greatly appreciate it. We're working hard to gain your trust and to build a community, so any support that you can give us back only betters the mission. So we appreciate that. Like, subscribe, and share this with your friends and talk about it because it makes the job better. Lastly, I need to mention, we want to talk about the National Fire Radio website, www.nationalfireradio.com. That is where you can get your merchandise that supports the show and the mission and the platform of National Fire Radio. Well, enough about all that. Let's hop into the daily episode. So thanks for tuning in. See you at the next one. Now, the daily episode. Our first sponsor of the podcast, Taylor's Tins. Taylor and his crew have been manufacturing helmet fronts, aluminum helmet fronts, since 2017. Over 200,000 plus shields have been manufactured by Taylor and his crew. Custom helmet fronts shipped within 24 to 48 hours. Whether it's one piece to a 500-piece department order, they'll get them out under 2 days. They're doing incredible work, 100% customizable product. Their product is top shelf. Not only are they doing aluminum helmet fronts, they're doing gas cards, playing cards, keychains, medical cards, and charts. Pump charts, street signs, custom signs, banquet awards, you name it, they're doing it. Go to taylorstins.com, and if you do order, use this promo code, NFR sent me, all one word, NFR sent me, and you'll get 15% off at checkout. That's because we have a strong relationship and friendship with Taylor from Taylor's Tins. They've been a longtime supporter of the National Fire Radio platform, and I appreciate their support and friendship. Without further ado, the daily episode. Hey everybody, Jeremy, National Fire Radio, back on the podcast today. Today's a very special episode. Third time's a charm. I've been trying to sit down with this guy, grab him for an hour, 2 hours, and just learn his story, because it's a guy that's a standout to me. I see him all over. People speak very highly of him. None other than Michael Dragonetti. Mike, thanks for joining me, man.
Hey, Jeremy, thanks for having me, man. You
Yeah.
make me sound like a rock star.
Well, listen.
I don't feel like one. But...
Well, you should. You should feel like one, because you're making a huge impact in the fire service. But I do like, I'm kind of like I like to think I want to be like Michael Buffer, you know, like where the intros when they come into the ring, and I want to like talk people up and make everybody feel good and so on. But
nice.
I have to say this, man, you have made a tremendous impact on the fire service in a specific discipline, and that's elevator and escalator rescues and operations. And that is your bread and butter when it comes to what you teach with your company, Dragon Rescue Management. It's a technical rescue company that is specific towards the elevator and escalator incidents, which is a super, narrow discipline that I think requires the attention that you give it. And I know there's a tremendous backstory there, but before we even get into Dragon management and so on, I do want to just give a little background about who you are for anybody that might not know you. 28 years in the American Fire Service with Stamford, Connecticut. Stamford's a career department just outside the New York state line. 28 years there. You just retired last week as the senior firefighter in Rescue Company 1. Pretty wild.
That's true. Yes, it is, man. It's humbling.
The ink's not even dry yet on the papers, and today I believe you mentioned is the first shift you would have been back since your retirement. Your tour is working today?
My tour is working today. Yep, Group 3.
Scanners off. We don't want to know what's going on, and we move on.
No, I don't want to think I'm missing anything. Exactly.
I get that, man. It makes sense. So I want to talk about retirement. We're going to hop into that, but just a little bit more about you. I mentioned the elevator and escalator rescue that you work very heavily in. But let's talk about it. New York City, the FDNY Technical Rescue School. You've taught your discipline there. You've been a hot instructor for FDIC. You contribute to all the trade journals that are out there. You've produced a several training minute videos for elevator and escalator repair. And prior to your fire service career, I mean, that was your discipline, and that's what you grew up in the trades in New York City doing elevator work. And so it makes sense how you got into this outside the fire service. Let's talk about this, man. Like, let's break this all down. Retiring as a senior firefighter, I think, is a fun conversation. But let's just talk about retirement in general. Today is the first day you didn't have to put on your Navy blues. How's it feel?
Weird. I mean, it's one word, weird.
Talk about it.
Yeah, I'm still wearing navy blues.
Of course, we all do.
Because obviously I have to wear some sort of uniform when I go out and teach the class. But yeah, the first time I'm not putting a Stanford firefighter uniform on. And again, today would have been my first shift back. If I was still working, my schedule was today to work this week on Monday and Friday, and it's going to take a little time to get used to. I love being a firefighter. I love being a fireman. I grew up around the fire service. My dad was a firefighter for 28 years down in Brooklyn. I rode out with him since age 12.
Nice.
So, if you think about it, I probably have close to 40 years of fire service exposure.
Yeah.
Especially because I was a volunteer before I became a career firefighter in Stamford. Just the fact that I'm never going to put turnout gear on again, that's humbling in itself. I wish I had time to join the volunteer fire service again, but it's just not. It's not going to happen. It's not in the cards for me.
So many guys say that after they hit retirement, they become even busier than they were when they were still on the line. And I think you're going to be very much that type of guy. I know how busy you are with your rescue company, Dragon Rescue Management, touring all over the country and sharing knowledge and experience on an industry that you love and that you have an incredible passion for. Where's all that passion come from?
All right, so it was by chance that I got involved with this. I have no problem talking in front of people, so I'll give you a little history behind my outwardness and not being able to talk in front of a large crowd.
Yeah.
I was a DJ. I was a disc jockey in Long Island. I worked the Hamptons in clubs. So I had a mobile training business being a DJ. So talking in front of people wasn't an issue.
Right.
Prior to the fire service, I had gotten into the elevator industry, and that was by chance because at the time, my father-in-law, may he rest in peace, talked me out of becoming a New York City cop. I was all set to go. I was supposed to start in the police academy in 1987. It was actually July of 1980. No, I'm sorry, take that back. It was July of 1986. A month prior to that, he knew it was getting close for me to take the job and start the academy there. And he was like, why do you want to become a cop? And I said, well, eventually I want to be a firefighter.
Right.
I was waiting for New York City to call me. I like to carry my time over, yada, yada, yada. He goes, but really, Mike, that's not your makeup. I could get you in the elevator business. I said, what's that? He goes, you're going to build elevators for a living. And I said, oh, that's interesting. And then he told me what we were going to make. And I was like, sign me up.
Yeah, there you go.
Exactly. That's how that started. So, from going to become a cop to, getting into the elevator trade. Yeah. I learned a tremendous amount of information working with my hands. It was just fantastic. Met some great people along the line. So that's how I got started.
And then so that was back in the mid 80s?
So it was 1986. I started in the elevator trade.
Okay. That was a wild time for New York City, though, and the NYPD. And you would have been coming into a department that was riddled with problems.
Big time problems. Well, and again, stems the conversation that I had with my father-in-law. Yeah. That's what he had said to me. He goes, with all the crap that's going on, why do you want to become a cop? Yeah. And I guess my thinking wasn't enough for him to say, oh, yeah, that's valid. That's a valid argument. And,
well, you're young.
I thank God. Yeah, well, I thank God every day I listen to him. And otherwise, I would not be here, Jeremy, where I am today. Yeah. There would be no elevator rescue training for me. I would have never had that opportunity. So,
would you have even followed your fast track to the fire department, right?
Yeah.
You probably would have went to the emergency services side, and you probably would have stayed.
I could have stayed there. Yeah, who knows?
Yeah, right.
I might have been part of that. That could have been a possibility as well. But again, I always had my sights on becoming a firefighter. Again,
Yeah.
my father was the one that got me hooked.
That
He totally
is,
got me hooked.
I mean, I can only imagine at 12 years old, your father letting you come along and hopping up in the doghouse and going for rides with those guys. I mean, that at such a young age is so impressionable. And back then, the city was a completely different animal. Firefighting was so different back then. You could do things like that. What did that do for you growing up? I mean, did you just have this overwhelming love for the fire service because of those early days with your dad?
I learned about the brotherhood.
Yeah.
I mean, the camaraderie that was going on with the job at the time. It was second to none. These guys just had a love for each other, and it was just an amazing family. And that was really what got me going in this. And I just wanted to be part of that. Even though I felt part of it as a kid, it wasn't the same. I just needed to be in that firehouse and knowing to say one day, "Hey, I'm on the job."
Yeah.
Um,
So,
and get into the job too.
yeah, for sure. So, I mean, you watched your father come up through Brooklyn, right? Was he always a Brooklyn fireman?
Yep, he worked in the same battalion for his entire career.
Wow.
He was in Engine Company 254, Ladder 153, the Avenue U Watchdogs.
Got it.
He survived the wall bombs fire.
Wow.
He had just missed as the rigs were pulling out. He was working the day tour when they were going out and missed the run. He would have been on the roof. He
Oh,
probably
my
would have
God.
been. He would have been burned. As a matter of fact, one of the guys that he was relieving, he was actually detailed. He found out he was detailed to the truck that day. Terry Campbell, he went through the roof and he had 40-50% of his burn body, his body burned. And my father would have been in his position.
Wow.
So again, it's fate. Things happen for a reason, man.
Well, it certainly does. I mean, there's stories like that. There's endless stories that play out that way, and it just reminds you of how fate plays it out and how dangerous this job truly is. And for you to grow up and to understand that and see that firsthand, that's wild. How did you find your way to Stamford over the city? I mean, obviously you were testing for the city, I would assume, while you were doing the elevator stuff.
Yeah, I came up short on one test. They had thrown it out. I
Yeah.
was about 700 names away from getting hired, which would have been like being number one on the Stanford list. Because again, you can't you're comparing apples to oranges with the size of the job.
Mm-hmm.
So that got thrown out, and then I kept testing. I didn't know anything about any other jobs except for FDNY because again, I grew up in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
I went to high school on Long Island, so the only job I knew was FDNY. I didn't know there was other jobs to go take tests for, and it didn't happen for me until I moved to Westchester County when I first got married back in 1992, when I realized that there was other jobs that I could test for.
Got it.
So it just never panned out for me with the FDNY, and there's no regrets that I ended up in Stamford because my father told me fire's fire. It doesn't matter whether you're going to be in Brooklyn or you're going to be in Stamford. There's no guarantees I'm going to get you to a busy company anyway, because at the time, back then you did have a little leverage to help your son to get someplace. I'm glad that things worked out the way they did. I don't even look back on that anymore.
Yeah, for sure. And so Stanford then, right? I mean, so 28 years, man. You've seen that city change dramatically, I would say, in the last 28 years, no?
Completely grow, man. Just to give you just a synopsis.
Yeah.
Of that. So, and since we're talking about elevators.
Yeah.
When I came on a job in 1995, we estimated about 1,100 elevators in the city of Stanford. There's definitely over 3,000 plus right now.
Wow.
So they're growing like weeds because, obviously, we have a certain border, 37 square miles, from, Pound Ridge border down to the Long Island Sound. We got Darien to the east of us. We got Greenwich to the west of us. So we can't grow out. The city keeps growing. So the only way it grows is in the up direction.
That's right.
So these buildings keep going up and it keep, throw these high rise in, elevators go with it. And so this city really took off. It is definitely the graphics of the place just completely changed since I got on the job in 95. It's amazing.
Yeah, and I would assume that the makeup of the city too, meaning the fire duty has changed too.
Oh yeah, we were getting pummeled when I got on a job in 95. For at least 5 years. We were going to work all the time, and because they cleaned it up and it became a concrete jungle, there's really nothing to burn anymore.
Yeah.
There's nothing to burn. I mean, we still get a decent amount of work here in Stamford, but it's just not what it was.
Right.
Not what it was.
And so talk to me about your early days then. I mean, you went from, that Brooklyn kid watching your dad go to work on a consistent basis. You move to Westchester. You end up getting hired in Stamford. You get there and you're like, wow, we're going on fires here. This ain't so bad.
No, it's not. No, I was happy. Obviously I didn't start in the rescue. I went to headquarters, where everybody pretty much starts out, and I was assigned to Engine 6, which we ran at the time at a headquarters. We ran 2 engine companies. Truck 1 was out of there. It was Engine 1, Engine 6, Truck 1, and then the rescue was in the same firehouse. We didn't even have our own separate firehouse at the time. So it was so much fun. When I tell you, it was. You got to figure there's 4. There's an officer and 3 firefighters on every apparatus in that firehouse. So if you do the math, it was crazy. It was just a whirlwind of personalities, and it was so much fun. And we were going to work. Every one of those companies in that firehouse was going out the door, and we were going to work, and we were going to runs. It was just a great place to be.
Yeah.
Totally
Now,
great place to
and
be.
then through your time there, I guess you did not lose track of your roots with the elevator and escalator work, right? So did you moonlight too, doing that work?
No, I couldn't do it. I had
Okay.
to give up my car, Jeremy. And I was a union.
Oh, okay. So it was the union city work was the union work then for the elevator and escalator. Okay.
Right. So I was with the International Union of Elevator Constructors, Local 1, and they covered New York City, all 5 boroughs, New Jersey, to like halfway point down to Central Jersey, a couple of suburban areas outside of New York. So it was a big local. We probably had 4,000 members strong in that local. And so when I left, I had to leave the trade completely. I didn't do anything. But what happened to me was when I went that transition from the elevator industry to the fire service. I mean, I never left the elevator trade behind me.
Right.
And I realized how much firefighters didn't know about elevator emergencies, because there was no formal training from the industry. They didn't want to train firefighters because they really didn't know how. And that just opened up so many doors. It opened up so many doors. So my passion now, my teaching business now actually found me. It wasn't something that I was looking for. Again, I just wanted to go to fires. That's what I wanted to do.
Right. You thought you were
wanted to be a fireman.
You thought you were putting the elevator work behind you. And then little did you know that all of a sudden you still have this responsibility now of dealing with them even on the line.
Yes. 100%.
That's you can't leave it behind, man.
And that class, how that class started was, I would never leave the firehouse, bro.
Right.
In that shift change, the guys would grab me because they were on an elevator run the night before or the last shift. Hey, Mike, this and that happened. What could we have done differently? This didn't go right. And I would stay at least an hour after my tour just to help the guys out, because I wanted to see them get the information that they needed. I didn't want to see anybody get hurt.
I mean, I could tell you, anyone listening to this podcast or that's going to listen to this podcast has been on an elevator call where something didn't go right. The frustration level goes through the roof. And what happens is you combine your mediocre experience on issues like that, because a lot of them are shut the power, open a door, right? And you get the people out. But then you always get that one every so often that really throws a kink in the system. And when you start challenging people and personnel with a situation that they're not overly comfortable with, it can become even more challenging very quickly.
And dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely. And dangerous.
Exactly. And that comfortability right there, that's something that can definitely bite you. You think, oh, that can't go wrong. I know that once I open an elevator door, it's not supposed to move.
Right.
But then that one time it does, because of something hidden that we don't see. That's when things can get bad.
So how do we, I mean, truly then, this is now happening. And that's the other thing about this too, is that it's no longer, just like you talked about the growth in Stamford from 1,100 to over 3,000. It's happening in every single community, from the most rural community, right, up through the largest cities. You're seeing much more, there's a much bigger inclusion of mechanized lifts and so on. So talk to me a little bit about the evolution of that then, and how important it is for us to really have a game plan and operational procedures in place when we got to go to calls like this.
Yeah, well, the day of kind of winging it, and I use that expression often, is out the window.
Yeah.
There's, if you think about it, elevators really haven't changed in 170 years in their existence. The same components are still there. It's just that they're trying to, the industry is trying to give so much floor space back to the customer that they have to change the way they do business. There's no motor rooms anymore.
Right.
The main components are in the elevator shaft. They're locating power sources anywhere in the building now with these MRLs, and it really challenges the firefighter. But again, the main components, they're relatively still the same. It's still the same stuff. But you have to have a game plan, and anyone that doesn't have an SOP or an SOG involving this low frequency, high risk event,
Right.
you're playing Russian roulette. You really are. So there has to be a plan, and that's what we're doing here with this program. We're giving these guys a plan so that they can pick up on any unsafe condition that they can possibly find and protect themselves and the people that they're serving.
Yeah, this is one of those. I mean, this is considered technical rescue, correct? When we're doing an
Uh,
elevator.
I would definitely go down a road. My job has declared this a technical rescue. If we have to, other than turn the power off, open the door, and let someone walk off, it becomes a technical rescue. Anytime you enter that elevator shaft, you have to consider it a technical rescue because
Yeah.
there's so many variables that we have to set up to make sure everybody's protected.
Yeah, and that brings so much to the table, though, right? Because I think of like a small town fire department, right? Small town volunteer fire department who gets their first mid-rise or their first doctor's office, and the Americans with Disability Act requires now an elevator, right? Or even your local municipal building in small towns, right? Everybody had to put in, because it's a public building or their library, they have to put in elevators, right? And
Yeah,
so all of us,
the ADA, yeah.
right? So the ADA compliancy requires that now. And so all of a sudden, all these smaller, sleepy communities are really starting to have this. And all of a sudden, you're getting elevator alarms. And then you go to 3 elevator alarms. And then all of a sudden, the fourth one is 90-year-old Mrs. Smith is stuck between 2 floors. And the fire
Yeah,
department, nobody else knows who to call, right? So it's like, call a fire department, right?
yeah.
And to have that action plan, though, I mean, this is something that requires thought. It requires something in place to protect our people, but also to protect the civilians we're sworn to serve.
Yeah, it's on us, and I'm going to tell you what's happening, and more often. Sometimes the building owner or the property manager, they're not even calling the elevator company for a stuck elevator anymore.
Right.
Do you know why? Do you know why they're not calling them?
I mean, I'm assuming it's cost.
Yes, because it costs them money.
Right.
They know that we're relatively free, other than paying taxes.
That's right.
We show up, we're going to do something about it. And again, we have to determine whether we have a fire, injury, illness, panic situation. We use the acronym FIP quite often to determine that, and that acronym came up from a good friend of mine, Dave Russell. Once you determine you have an emergency, we're going to move forward and step into action. But most of the time, it's not an emergency situation. They probably could have waited for the elevator company to show up and get somebody out.
Yeah.
That's what we're facing here now.
What is it?
Playing games.
Yeah. What did it look like for you? I mean, everybody's response procedures across the country vary, right? I mean, some places it's a truck company respond, single truck, some places dispatch multiple companies and a rescue company. In Stamford, where you were, I mean, I have to think that you're the guy that wrote the curriculum. I know that the training academy there basically was built around your elevator shafts, if I know that story to be correct. And I know that, you do a lot of that teaching there for the city that you just retired from. But what did a typical elevator response for you guys look at? Was it a rescue company assigned?
Yeah. So the way it works in the city of Stamford, it's always been this way. We respond with the first due truck in that area,
Right.
and then the rescue goes on all elevator runs.
Okay.
There are a lot of the times the truck probably handle it by themselves. And,
Right.
The running joke is they call the rescue the big blue boomerang on elevator runs because
I
we
like
just,
that.
we'll turn around and go back into service.
Yeah,
when
right,
it's not
right.
needed unless it's something more challenging for the truck company. But with 8 people, 2 officers, and 6 firefighters, you're going to handle pretty much anything that's thrown at you. As far as a stuck occupied elevator.
Yeah, but it
So
should it should
that was our those were our run cards. And again, depending on where you are in the country, you could get a single truck company that's going to show up with 3 people on it. You know,
sure. Right.
to me, that's not enough.
Okay.
I think what the response should be for other departments who are listening to this, that you need at least 6 people on scene to set up for the worst case scenario, which is a top axis hatch removal. Um, and the reason why I came up with that number of 6, 2 firefighters right away got to go to the machine room. That's a gimme. Right, we always work in pairs, and we got to get up to the machine room. The other 4 are going to be at the elevator to set up for that top hatch removal. You need an incident commander, you need a person working the edge, and you need 2 people to make entry. One to go into the car to do the patient packaging, and one to accept that patient that's going to be coming out up the ladder out the access hatch.
Right.
So you need 6 people.
And that's 6 people that are trained and fully capable of handling this situation.
That, yes.
Right.
Yes,
So
sir.
I would assume a lot of companies then, if you're doing a top hatch removal, I would assume that most departments are going to need more than 6 people, because not everybody's going to be proficient in this discipline.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
How much has the popularity of this topic? I mean, I know you've taught at Joey D, you teach at conferences all over the country. I know that everybody, I haven't taken your class yet, and I was going to talk to you after this to see what it's going to take to get you into my area and do a regional thing. I think it's super valuable. We're seeing such an increase in construction here that we are seeing that boom of elevators being installed, all different styles. Mind you, it's not just one style anymore, which is another, interesting thing when you start talking about this, is it's not just cable hoist anymore, right? Hydraulic, electric, all of it, right? So
it's everything.
Yeah. And so to be able to do that, right? Like looking at that, the popularity of this class has had to explode as the population has exploded.
Oh, you're 100%. I mean, I started again doing this class back in 1999, and how it got started was it was started with my job.
Yeah.
At the time, the chief of department was concerned about Y2K. It was coming in. They thought that the computers weren't going to recognize
that's right.
00.
I remember that. Yep.
And we were supposed to get this whole giant, power outage, and every elevator in the city of Stamford was going to stall with people in it.
I remember that
mindset.
Oh yeah, I have Y2K, man. Absolutely.
What a big flop that was.
Yeah, well, nothing. So everybody was holding their breath at midnight and nothing happened.
Exactly, and nothing happened. And I just remember that night I was working that shift. They put a second rescue in service and an extra truck.
It's wild.
And an engine.
Yeah, right.
Just to handle it. And the rescue one, which was my unit, never turned a wheel.
You guys slept well that night, huh?
We never turned a wheel. It was amazing. I hate to say that, and again, I want to always tell my wife that we're busy.
Yeah. I get it.
50 fires every night.
Right.
The bottom line was, it was a big flop. It never happened. So that's how the thing got started back in 1999. Was he wanted me to train the department, and I had no idea about becoming an instructor. I knew I could talk in front of people, and I knew the information from being in the trade, but I needed help. So there was a couple of guys on my job that were really good instructors at the time. I'm going to throw names out there. So the chief of department right now, who is Trevor Roach, he was a big factor in that. He was an instructor. He taught me how to become an instructor, talked me into going to be getting my instructor certification. I did all that. And then that's how the class started. If it wasn't for him, Kurt Semmel, another guy that was, big on getting me to do the program.
Right.
I would not be where I am today without those 2 guys. They really pushed me, and and that's how the class started. So it started with my job, and then the neighboring job found out I delivered that program, and then it just started, word of mouth, man. That's all it was. I never did any kind of advertising.
Right.
They knew I was in the business, and they knew I was a fireman in the rescue going to elevator calls, and the rest is history, man.
Yeah, and it has exploded, right? Exponentially. I mean,
without a doubt. I'm doing 70 classes a year. That's what I'm doing. I'm averaging right now.
70.
I'm already booking it.
Wow.
70 classes, and I'm booking into 24 already.
And
we haven't even started.
And what do classes look like, Mike? Are they 2 days? Is it a practical? Is it classroom hands-on?
So I offer 3 levels of training. Level 1 is the awareness class. It's a full day lecture with breaks, obviously. It's a full day lecture that covers everything from A to Z. We talk about the design of the elevators, the parts, knowing everything you can possibly think of about elevators, and safety is like paramount that we push. So that lecture is incorporated with props that I built for the classroom with actual elevators. I basically take the elevator to the classroom, and then videos that I've done. I use the training minutes videos that I did for Fire Engineering
Yeah.
Magazine
Yeah.
in the class. So it's a very dynamic program, and the guys get a ton of information just out of the lecture alone.
I bet.
But then we take it to this to the next level, and obviously, just looking at listen to someone talk and looking at a PowerPoint program, you really need to touch stuff. You need to get your hands on stuff. So that came the hands-on portion, and we do the operations level you can go to is it's all hands-on the second day.
Yeah.
And we cover manually lowering a hydraulic elevator to use to your advantage, because the safest way to take someone out is floor level through the normal entranceway. If you can't get the elevator to do it by itself and it's a hydro, we can make that happen. It's there for firefighter use because it's properly marked and clearly marked. We go over use of keys and other options. If you don't have a keyhole present on a floor, or something's broken on an elevator door lock, you need other means of getting in without dragging in the hearse tool and forcing an elevator door, which I see all the time. I make fun of this. But again, firemen don't know what they don't know, but there are better options. There's safer options of manually accessing through that. We go over, your worst case scenario, top access hatch removal. We'll show you how to set up a belay system. Very simple. You don't have to be a rope genius to figure it out. And we'll set you up and show you how to do a top hatch removal. And then part of that also of the hands-on is we take you through both types of elevators, and we give you a full tour on the equipment, and we discuss safety around that equipment so you don't get yourself jammed up.
Yeah, the important.
So that's the operations level.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Keep going.
So the last day, which is day 3, that's technician. That covers any kind of catastrophic emergency that could be thrown at you outside of the worst case scenario, taking someone out through a top hatch. Basically, an elevator trapped in a blind shaft where there's no access to get someone out through the normal entranceway. We'll show you how to set up for that type of removal. God forbid somebody falls down the elevator shaft and gets pinned, or an elevator mechanic goes down with an emergency. We cover everything from A to Z, and that's a standalone program. Especially if you got a compromised elevator and you have to secure that elevator mechanically, we show you how to do that as well. So that's the standalone technician day.
Yeah. There's a lot there, man. That's a lot packed into a little, I feel, but obviously you got to deliver it in a timely fashion. But, I have to think that a lot of departments probably do refreshers with you as well, right? Or,
every year.
Yeah. Yeah. I find it to be interesting. I feel like it's one of those topics that's like sleepy. Like guys are like, yeah, what's the big deal, right? We go to hundreds of these a day or hundreds of these a month, especially in a downtown district or something like that where companies are constantly doing elevators and so on. And a lot of times it is just bread and butter, right? Until you get to that one that throws that curve to you, like we mentioned before. And I think that's where the importance of having, where I'm headed with this is the importance of being mechanically inclined even before taking your class, like understanding the basics of, electric and hydraulics, right? And things like that. Yeah.
That is huge to have that as a background, no doubt.
And that's where I think we got to take advantage of the people within our companies and our departments, right, that have maybe a background in some of these things where they might be able to come a little bit forward in their training and to latch on to, say, something like this, and where they can become a true resource. Because not everybody has information or the ability to comprehend like people that are really mechanically inclined.
Right. And what I'm also finding, Jeremy, and I'm sure guys that are listening and yourself, anybody who's been in the fire service for, multiple years, like I've been in the fire service close to 40 years. The trade is a dinosaur now.
Yeah,
anybody coming in with the trade experience, it's like a dinosaur.
Yeah.
That you can find somebody like that. Nobody does hands-on jobs anymore. And that is hurting the fire service, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I was taking this conversation, because I was hoping you were going to come with me on this, this journey of the conversation. But
I'm there.
That's where I think your training is becoming more and more important, right? Because as systems get more complicated, now you start talking about variable frequency drives, and you start talking about different things that are involved in mechanicals like this. If you don't have the basics coming into it, not only do you have to learn the advanced, but you got to learn the basics too.
Yeah, without a doubt. And you can get hurt without proper knowledge. And as we know, knowledge is power. The more information that you can absorb on, and again, we're just talking about elevators right
Yeah,
now.
right.
The safer the operation is going to be. There's no two ways about it. And the goal of my program is for you as a firefighter to pick up on an unsafe condition and say to yourself, you know what, maybe we shouldn't go further. Maybe we should wait for the elevator mechanic before somebody else gets hurt.
That's a great point, Mike. I didn't even think of that, but recognizing when you're in over your head.
You have to, and we have to work inside our scope of training as well. And a lot of guys I find that don't follow those rules either. My biggest advice to anyone is that you always work in your scope of training. Never work outside of that, because not only can someone get hurt, but the lawyers are going to have a field day with you when they find out you did something you weren't supposed to.
100%, man. I just wrote that down. Learn when you're in over your head. I think too often
Yep.
in the fire service, we like to bury our head in the sand and pretend that we know everything and we know what we're
And
doing.
we don't.
No, you do
No,
not.
we don't. No. And one thing, and I'll share something else with you. We used to use the saying that firefighters were jacks of all trades.
Yeah.
That has to go out the window. What a firefighter actually is, and I'm trying to remember who actually stated this, about what I'm going to say, and I can't think off the top of my head who it was. But it was an instructor from Westchester County Training Center. Um, what we are professional problem solvers. So with that said, if you know if we're there to solve a problem, if we become the problem, we're not doing anything. We're not doing anything. So we need to really educate ourselves, and that's going to help us. That's going to help us become that professional problem solver.
100%. I mean, knowledge is more important now than ever, especially when the job's getting more and more complicated. I couldn't agree with you more. Talk to me then about 70 lectures and conferences a year. You're already probably booking out 24, I would imagine.
Yep.
Right?
I am.
How do you juggle this? I mean, you and I, before I hit the record button this morning, you and I were talking about our calendars. And, after retirement, sometimes you become even busier. And I think that this is an important conversation, and I'd love to have it with you about how we manage our time when you're in the firehouse and juggling full-time outside also. And the stresses that come with that, because I thought that was a really interesting conversation that you and I had before we hit record. So talk to me a little bit about that, because you are a busy man. I'm a busy man. And I talked about how I have to keep a paper calendar in front of me that is constantly moving, meaning I'm constantly crossing, erasing, writing in, and so on. And I have to be upfront and honest with my wife once a week about my scheduling so she understands what my week, what my month looks like. How did you balance all this for 28 years, man? Because I know how popular Dragon Rescue Management is. So how did you do it?
Well, it wasn't easy.
Yeah.
And again, my biggest relief right now, and I hate to say this, was I had to retire. I threw my papers in last week, and it wasn't an easy decision.
Yeah.
But the hardest thing for me was, again, I use the example. Like I said, I just recently I was in Austin, Texas for 8 straight days of training in 107-degree weather.
Wow.
And we were there every day, training that department in that region. And I remember I had to go the day I was flying back. I had to go to work the next day, and I had I couldn't get the day off. There was no room. We're down a tremendous amount of people on
Right.
the Stamford Fire Department.
Yep.
So the overtime is through the roof. They're holding shifts over. So there was no one that could help me. And I remember flying back that day. My flight was delayed 2 hours. I didn't get home until 1 o'clock in the morning, and I had to be in the firehouse at 7 a.m. the next day.
On your A game.
On my A game. And I got to tell you, it wasn't easy.
Right.
Thank God we didn't go to any jobs that day. But again, I had to be on my A game, and
Yeah.
I realized at that moment that I had to pull the plug on the fire service, because I don't want to give up the training because firefighters need this training.
Yeah.
And again, what good would it have been for me to stay as a firefighter, maybe for another 4 years or so, and then just completely give this up? And I had to make that decision. So other than that, that was the first step. And as I was going as a firefighter, as we talked, A paper calendar is huge.
Yeah.
I can't do it on a cell phone anymore. It's
I
just
can't
gotten out
either.
of hand.
Yeah.
I have to physically see it and pull the calendar up. And when I'm booking stuff, I'm looking to make sure that I got at least a couple of days off in between. But it's definitely going to get easier for me now. There's no doubt. And I've got a super awesome crew behind me.
Yeah.
I
Nice.
got to tell you, my guys are fantastic. I have guys that have elevator experience that are teaching with me. They're still involved with the business. And then I'm looking to hire more people because again, I'm going to get to the point now where I'm going to have multiple classes going on at one time, where I'm going to be at one, and then I got to send somebody that has the same similar background as me to another job. So
How
it's really starting to expand.
How hard is that though? And meaning, Mike Dragonetti is Dragon Rescue, right? So do you find that people are getting torn if they don't get you? Because I'm starting to find that as we do more
Yes.
work with National Fire Radio, everybody's expecting me all the time, and I'm like, well, I can't be everywhere at one time. You got to trust my people too, and my people
Right.
represent my vision and my beliefs. So are you feeling that struggle?
Yeah, and I really have to sell them on the idea that the people I'm going to send there is not just someone I pulled out of my hip pocket.
Exactly.
That they're going to give the same thing. So
Yeah.
you know exactly where I'm coming from
Yeah,
on
I
that.
do.
So
I do.
we're getting to that point now where they're starting to trust, my recommendation. And again, it's not someone that I'm going to just send there, just to fill the spot. It's going to be someone that has the same background that I have.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's powerful. And that's why I kind of bring that up is, we're talking about your training company and how busy you are. And as you scale accordingly, now that you're retired, you're going to be you need to be able to lean on people that are going to be able to represent, the best in the training that you offer. So, I mean, that's super important. Talk to me a little bit about, and I think this is a fascinating part. You mentioned that in your early days in Brooklyn riding with your dad, what you really got out of that was the camaraderie and brotherhood that the fire service represented, right? And back then in the 80s, I mean, it was bubbling over with guys, just giants, right? Guys that were just, not only were they sensational firefighters and loved the job, but they loved each other, right?
Yes.
Over your years, I know just through other conversations with you, you talk about all the contacts you've made, the friends you've made across the world, right? And a lot of that has to do not just with Stamford, but obviously with Dragon Rescue. And so I know you do a tremendous amount of work in New York City. I know you have stories about, people that you know and have worked with and you call, good friends. What does that do for you? Have you ever taken that step back and just smiled, just for 5 minutes, take it in about what you've been able to build over the last 40 years?
And I do.
That's awesome.
If it wasn't for my father being affiliated with the FDNY and spending 28 years, my program would not be where it is today. I would have never got into the FDNY training at the rescue school. Back in and I did that for a good amount of years. I did it from 2002 to 2005. It was right after 9/11, and they took a big hit, and they had to replace the members that they lost, and we had to train them, and they brought me in, for that. But it was by chance how I got myself in there. My father was at a retirement party, and he ran into an old friend of his, Joe Russo. Joe Russo was a captain in his old firehouse in Engine 254, and Joe was doing some training down at Randall's Island on lightweight building construction. And my father said, "Oh, Joe, you're an instructor." He goes, "My kid is too. Mike." He goes, "Oh, Mike's doing that." He goes, "What's he doing?" He's doing elevator emergencies. He's teaching firemen how to get people out of stuck elevators. And he goes, "Oh my God, we need that at the FDNY. We don't really have a good program." And that's how the whole thing got started.
Wow. Yeah.
And I remember the first delivery, Jeremy, was wild. Joe called me up and he said, "Would you be interested in doing a drill down at Avenue U? Would you come and do bring your stuff? And would you be interested in doing a class in the back of the firehouse?" So again, Engine 254 has a truck and an engine, right? 153 and 254. 12 guys. Okay. So I thought I was only getting 12 guys in the kitchen because the kitchen's tiny, and
Sure.
they had a racquetball court out back where I set my props on. So I was going to do the PowerPoint with them, go over stuff, and then we were going to spill out and just do some hands-on stuff on the racquetball court. He calls me the night before and says, "Hey, Mike," he goes, I'm gonna invite a few extra guys down. The division chief wants to come. Rescue 2 is going to be there. Squad 1 is going to be there. And I opened it up to the rest of the battalion.
Yeah, no pressure.
So, no pressure.
No pressure at all.
But now it's in the middle of August, Jeremy, that we're doing this class. And there's 45 guys in this kitchen.
Oh, my God.
And you could hear a pin drop.
Oh, my God.
So it was a humbling thing. And that, again, if it wasn't for that it would have never got started. Even to go a little further on this, and if I'm rambling,
no, go.
So Joe Russo, after the class was delivered, he goes, "I'm going to hook you up with a couple guys in SOC. They really could use this training." Hooks me up with Captain Terry Hatton.
Yeah.
And I never got a chance to meet the guy. I get choked up thinking about it. We had numerous phone conversations. He wanted to get this program in so desperately. He had some ideas himself, and we were throwing stuff back and forth. And I never got a chance to meet him. But when 9/11 happened, I was supposed to be with him going over this class. He invited me down to the firehouse. He was working a day tour. Told me that we'd go. They were going to do a drill. He told me to bring my gear with me, and then at the end of the day, after everything was done and we settled down around 3-4 o'clock, we were going to sit down and we were going to discuss the program. And the night before that happened, I find out that I have nobody to take my 2 young kids off the bus from school. So if it wasn't for my kids, I wouldn't be alive today, because I would have been down there. So again, fate takes over and things just happen, and that was a powerful thing for me, man.
Yeah,
totally
and
powerful.
It should be said, Terry Hatton was a huge personality on the job, captain of Rescue Company 1 in Manhattan, who perished on 9/11 that day. And, his love was insatiable for the job. Like he trained, that's all they did. And so on. So anybody listening to this podcast, if you don't know who Terry Hatton is, you need to do some homework and learn, because he's one of those guys that is a standout in this industry and it made, huge strides in the American Fire Service. Mike, that's powerful, man. That is powerful.
It goes, I can take it even a step further. So not only did I have to cancel my, my trip to go see him, at the time, I had another guy, and again, it's kind of a weird setup, but I had a guy from the elevator industry that helped me design the program, who was working for the Schindler Elevator Company.
Yeah.
And I wanted him at the meeting with me to meet Terry Hatton. And he couldn't make it. So I had thought to myself, all right, well, you know what? We'll push it off to another day when you're available and when Terry's working, and we'll go back down to Rescue 1. So I had canceled, we had canceled that. And then I set up an appointment with a resident elevator mechanic that worked in Tower 2 at the Trade Center.
Yeah.
And he was supposed to put us on top of an elevator so that we could go and take pictures of these access panels in this blind shaft elevator, because there was some discussion between me and Terry Hatton about access panels and how to open those up and take pictures of them.
Right.
So again, I cheated death again a second time because of my kids the night before. My plan was, now I was going to go down to Trade Center 2, meet this guy, the elevator mechanic from Ace Elevator. We were going to take our pictures, and then Andy was going to meet me after work to meet Terry Hatton at the firehouse. So I would have been on top of Tower 2 when those planes hit, if that would have went forward.
Wow.
So let that sink in for a second.
All right,
that's enough of that.
Yeah. But I mean,
that's enough of that.
But I think, okay, so, where wow, where that just went, that's incredible. But here's the thing, right, is like opportunity, and you, through your connections and through your passion for the job, you've been able to make incredible relationships that are lifetime relationships through the commonality of understanding the importance of training for elevator and escalator emergencies, right? And what your career has also allowed you to do is to have access to places like the Trade Center, right? Like you have the abilities with your training and your connections. That's why I think that's another whole aspect of your training company, and how narrow you are on what you teach, because you have full access to that industry. And I think that's what sets you apart.
Yeah, and again, putting myself at that with that phrase setting me apart. I don't want to consider myself an expert, but yeah, but you're 100% right about having the contacts.
Yeah.
And I'll just throw out another example. Last year, a lieutenant in Rescue One, Billy Ryan, had approached me and he said, we're getting these double decker elevators that are coming in. It was one Vanderbilt actually down right outside the Grand Central Terminal, and
Right.
they had these double decker elevators, and they wanted to do a drill. And I knew the elevator mechanic that ran the place, and made one phone call. And again, Rescue One comes down, a couple of truck companies in the first due area, and we went down. And again, it was a benefit for them, but it was also a benefit for me because I was able to take pictures.
Yeah.
I was able to share with my students. But having those connections, it's priceless, man. It really is priceless.
And they're built, listen, man, but that's built on your
Built on
back.
trust.
I mean, your
Yeah.
back is blood, sweat, tears, the trust, the
Yep.
brotherhood, the mutual respect for one another. I mean, things like this,
100%.
relationships like this aren't built overnight.
No, it takes years. It takes years to have that relationship built. And again, it comes from one meeting with one person, and then, oh, I want to introduce you to this guy, and then it just completely escalates from there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how I got started with the FDIC. Was the New York City firefighter guys, the guys I knew on the job there. Oh, we're going out there every year. Why don't you put a class in?
Yeah.
I'll set you up. You can talk to Bobby Holton. Call Bobby Holton, and you're put in for the FDIC. I was like, oh, what a great concept. And again, that's how things get started. You know one person, he introduces you to somebody else.
And and I can't stress that enough. I talk about that a lot. Relationships matter, but the only way you can build strong relationships is if you're true to yourself and true to the people that you want to build relationships with. And, I think that is a part of the conversation that's getting lost these days, is that not everybody is giving each other enough time and space to learn who one another is to build these relationships. I look at like the relationships I've been able to build and forge forward with, and then I love to make those relationships and bridge that gap behind me between other people so that they can make the same type of relationships. That's important to me because I think that's what this job is truly all about. And so
I totally agree with you 100%.
Yeah. And so just to kind of transition forward just a little bit, something that caught my eye on your resume, you had sent over your bio and your resume and stuff. We were going through it. Relationships are super important. You retired off the job in Stamford as a senior man in the rescue company, which is a prestigious position. It always is. The wheelman of the rescue company is usually the most senior guy, brings a lot to the table. And the fact that you retired 28 years as a firefighter, I know you were acting lieutenant for quite a while here and there when they needed you to. But the other thing that caught my eye was the developed and delivered the Deputy Chief's Aid training program.
So I'll tell you a little bit about that one.
Are you good talking about that? And like,
yeah, no worries.
What was that laugh? That's what I want to know. What was that laugh?
Because I left the rescue company for a little while. A chief that was getting promoted, Pat Tripodi. We were such good friends, and at the time there was some transition going on in the rescue. It was a little bit of like I want to say uneasiness going on.
Got it.
It wasn't that I wasn't happy, but I didn't like where things were going at the time. And he had said to me, he goes, "Listen, man," he goes, "I'm gonna, I'm getting promoted to deputy chief's aide." He goes, "Would you mind coming over and being my aide for a little while?" And it was later in my years, and I felt that I was kind of slowing down a little bit, but I could still hang with the guys and do my job and so forth. I'm in the gym and I'm physically fit, but I said to myself, you know what? Maybe I'll give this a shot because I think that being an aide would help me, nail the next lieutenant that comes out. I'm going to learn a different aspect of the job. I'm not just inside getting dirty, and I'm going to be able to see what everybody's doing from the outside. The truck companies, are they opening up the roof? Are they doing their searches? Are they doing forcible entry right? The line stretching, making sure a backup line is in place. These were things that I got to see from that command post. And my father, he finished his career, his last 6 years in the 3-3 Battalion in Brooklyn as the chief's aide. So
cool.
I saw what he did, and I knew what the job entailed. And Pat promised me that he wasn't going to just use me as a driver. He wanted me to be involved at the fire scene, and the guy used me like I was a second chief in the car.
It's awesome.
So it was awesome. We had a great relationship together, and so he wanted me to take what I was doing for him and spread it to the rest of the job in that aide position, because it wasn't always just an assigned, deputy chief's aide that was working that position. And at one time, I got to be honest with you, the DCA's position was basically just the driver. He just got the chief to the scene, and the chief ran the entire show, logistics, running the fire. That was all on him.
Right.
And that's a tremendous amount of work and pressure.
Huge task. Yeah.
Huge task. So again, what I ended up doing was I used my contacts in the New York City Fire Department. I went down and I reached out to a couple of different chief's aides. They showed me what they were doing. Basically writing a script for the aide so he could do his progress reports for the chief, and the chief that didn't have to get involved with that, so he could run the fire. And again, I would take care of all the incoming units, what we had on scene, what the progress was being made. And again, it came from me going to make a visit with someone who I knew who was a really damn good chief's aide.
That's right.
And then I ended up writing a program for Stanford.
And
I trained the rest of the guys. I just took my what I learned and knowledge, and then I put the deputy chief's aide program together.
So many departments don't have the ability to give their chiefs, whether the tour commander, battalion chief, deputy, whatever position, but a lot of chiefs don't have the fortunate ability to have an aide. And what the aide can do, I think the chief's aide is such an incredible position. And I want to do just an episode on that position with a couple guys that were in those roles. So I will be hitting you back up for this conversation because I absolutely love, because they are the mutual respect and the relationship that the aide has with their chief, especially if they're really well put together as a duo. It is powerful. It's unstoppable. And the amount of trust, I remember talking to like Mo Davis out of Houston, and he was talking about his aide and how if he suggests something, he does it. He says, I trust him blindly because I know he knows how I go about these fires, and we have this relationship. I'll ask him afterwards why he got to that conclusion, but I trust him. And it's an incredible relationship, and I think that's probably what you built too within your program, was that there was this mutual respect and admiration for one another when you sat in the chief's buggy.
Oh, without a doubt. And again, it wasn't just sitting in there.
No, I know that. Right. Yeah, absolutely.
You threw your gear on.
Yeah. SCBA, recon, all of it.
I would go to the C side of the building if I could get there. And
That's right.
His eyes and ears back there.
That's right.
Until a safety officer showed up or until the officers got in position, and let him know what the hell was going on, because he couldn't see from the command post. Yeah. You can't see from there.
It's a great position, and that caught my eye when I was going over what you had sent me, and I said, "Oh, that's an interesting conversation," because to be able to develop a program around that, right? Where originally you called it a DCA, which is great, deputy chief aide, I assume, right? DCA position.
Yeah, because we don't have battalion chiefs in the city of Stamford. The deputy chief is the ship commander.
Yeah. So I just, from going from just the driver, right, and parking the vehicle and setting up the command board to an actual, active role on the fire ground, an operational role, I think is just really cool to be able to craft a program around that. It's awesome.
100%. And I got news for you. We never even, prior to me getting the job as the deputy chief's aide, we didn't even have a command board. I used my contacts. I went to Con Ed, and I had a friend of mine, Jim Feeney. He was huge with Con Ed, and I knew they had the command boards from the FDNY using the ones that Con Ed gave them.
Yep.
And I went down to see him. I said, Jimmy, can you get me a command board? And we went out and we made all these magnetic tiles based on what the FDNY was using and what Con Ed was doing. And we got our first command board put into place back in 2014.
I love that before. Mike, everything we're talking about is relationship driven in this whole hour. It's all relationships. And it should be said, too, a lot of people listening, they don't even know who Con Ed is. Con Edison is the power company for New York City, the Metro New York City area. And they, in fact, implemented the incident command system, I think, prior to FDNY using it. And those command boards came from Con Edison's emergency response group. It's pretty wild. That's a cool story in and of itself right there. I'd love to. I got to find. Now I'm going to lean on you to get me a contact at Con Ed that knows the backstory on that, because that's cool. That's very cool.
I'll put you in touch with him. He's a great guy. As a matter of fact, he's still an active member of the Tarrytown Fire Department.
Oh, no kidding. Okay.
Yeah, I just saw him this weekend. I was doing some training with him, so we reunited our friendship again. Rekindled it.
That's awesome.
But Jimmy Feeney, he's a great guy. He was a retired firefighter out of White Plains, New York.
Yeah.
Just north of the Bronx, and then he went to Con Ed right after he retired. And,
that's cool.
Spent a lot of time.
Well, good. I'm gonna take you up on that, because I'd love to pick his brain on that. So let me ask you this: how great is the fire service?
There's nothing better, man. There's nothing better. And what I can tell you is this: I thought that me retiring, I'm going to leave the fire service.
Yeah.
But that's not true, man. I'm still deeply engaged with it. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be more engaged with the fire service because I'm going to be visiting so many different departments, through my business, and just to hear what other guys are doing. And I'll come back every once in a while and visit the guys at the firehouse if they have me, and just see what's going on and making sure everybody's still cool.
I know, go ahead.
There's nothing like it. It's second to none.
Yeah.
I at the age of 5, me walking the first time into my dad's firehouse to pick up his paycheck on a Friday afternoon. Afternoon, I was hooked, man. I was hooked. And, it's just going to take a little bit of an adjustment, Jerry.
Yeah. Well, I ask you that question because I think that a lot of people are losing their way about it. And I think that listening to the last hour with you and sitting here and kind of learning your story, it's exactly what you said in the first 10 minutes of this podcast today about the impression the fire service left on you from an early age, and you just reiterated it again, picking up your dad's paycheck at 5 years old. The job left such an impression on you, and now you have left the job, but you're continuing through your management, through your rescue company, your company, and spreading the word, and still lighting the fire and keeping that passion fueled through delivering, an important message through your training company. But man, like, you're leaving the job just as much as you loved the job when you came into it.
I did, man. And it's going to be a hard transition, but I still love it, and I hope I left it better. That's one of the things that was a goal of mine. To the old saying about leave the job better than you found it, and I think I did. And I still want to be able to make the job better. There's no doubt, and I'm willing. And I do. I will share my experiences and my knowledge with anybody that's willing to listen to me.
I love that.
If somebody has wants to make a phone call and talk about elevators, that's fine. If they want to talk about rescue or technical rescue, firefighting, anything, you have something you want to discuss. I'll give my cell phone number right now over the air.
Yeah.
914-403-5805. Give me a call. We'll shoot the shit. I have no problem. You want to send me an email, just go to my website, click on my email address, send me an email. You can text me. I don't care. Just don't call me at 4:00 in the morning when I'm sleeping. I do have my phone on silent, but I'm here for you guys. I'm here for the fire service, and I want to continue doing that until I take my last breath.
Man, that's huge. And I just want to say thank you for joining me today. We've been going for about an hour, and it's just been a fantastic conversation, Mike. Like I said, third time's a charm putting this together. It should be said, too, that, you worked with my uncle very early on in your career, right? John?
John Dodge. He's got the same initials as you.
JD. He does.
What a character that guy was. I loved him, man.
Yeah, and I can't wait to put this all together and then send him the link to it. I will.
You got to send it to his wife, Kathy.
I will.
I have such a love for her too.
Kathy's awesome. We text all the time. She's great. But just really good people, and it's just fun for me to be able to capture. Like today, talking to you has just been a lot of fun because it was just such a great conversation. And relationships matter, and love for the job matters, man. And I just can't thank you enough for joining me today. Truly.
Thank you, Jeremy. I appreciate you having me on, and I look forward to continuing our friendship and building it.
Yeah, for sure, man. Whatever we can do to help each other, that's how we roll. And you have an open invitation here. Anytime you want to come back on the show, I'd love to have you. You have an open invitation anytime, because I know you have a lot more tucked away in those 40 years of experience that you want to share. And for you to share your number today, your email, just one more time, the email address where people can get you, and the website so people can go check you out.
Yeah, so my email address direct is mad@dragonrescue.com. The name of my website is dragonrescue.com, obviously. So you can either send me a direct email to that link, or you can just go visit the website and just click on my email address. Again, I'm going to give my cell phone number again: 914-403-5805. Hit me up. I have my Facebook pages. I didn't even get a chance to talk about those, but
Yeah.
The Facebook group is a phenomenal place.
Talk about it.
To share so much information regarding elevator emergencies. It's called Elevator Emergency Management. It's a closed group because a lot of the stuff we share there should not be shared with the general public because of the nature of somebody getting hurt. So we invite you to that closed group. You're going to have to answer a couple of questions before you get on, just to make sure that you are a firefighter and that you're just not some Joe Schmo that wants to go elevator surfing inside the elevator shaft.
I get it.
So we make sure we do that. I also do posts on Instagram. I don't really post a tremendous amount of. I don't post the same information I do on the private page on Instagram because that is open to the general public. But you can hit me up there at Dragon Rescue Management on Instagram. So check out those two pages. You guys will be very satisfied with the information that's there, because not only am I spouting information on there, but we have elevator industry trade people that are also members of that group that have fire service background and also in the trade. So we have a lot of information to share with you guys.
I love it, man. Thank you for sharing all that. Tremendous amount. And it should be said, you sharing this information makes this job better. And thank you, brother, for doing just that. Congratulations on retirement. And I look forward to meeting you and hooking up soon, man. It'd be great.
Okay. You got it, Jeremy. Take care now.
Good. Stay right here, Mike. I'm just going to sign off the podcast. I'll come right back to you. So hang out one sec, okay?
You got it, brother.
Great, man. Everyone, thanks for tuning in to this very powerful episode of the National Fire Radio Podcast. Mike Dragonetti, Dragon Rescue Management. Check him out. He gave you all his handles where you can find him. He is teaching and changing the game when it comes to elevator and escalator emergency response. He's the guy that you want to talk with. Thanks for tuning in. Take this conversation today, take it back to the firehouse and talk about it, because when we're talking about the job, we're making the job better. Send us an email, podcast@nationalfireradio.com, for any of your thoughts or ideas or comments about any of these episodes that you hear or things that you want to hear. And, well, we're done. We're out of here. So thanks for tuning in. We'll see you at the next one. Jeremy, National Fire Radio. National Fire Radio.